Well, well, well. Feel that pressure in the air. That's not silence. That's the moment right before reality flinches. You didn't manifest this. That word is too soft, too spiritual, too polite for what actually happened. Manifesting is what people say when they want to feel safe about power they don't fully understand. What you did was different. You didn't ask the universe nicely. You didn't visualize and hope. You applied pressure until something ancient cracked. And now the same systems that ignored you are replaying the footage frame by frame, trying to figure out if you bent reality on purpose. Because here's the part they don't say out loud. Accidents don't move like this. Coincidences don't stack this clean. Luck doesn't arrive with precision timing and surgical impact. What you triggered had structure, intent, momentum. And that scares the hell out of people who survive by believing the world is predictable. You can feel it in how they look at you now. Not admiration, not fear either. Suspicion. The kind that comes when someone realizes the rules they memorized didn't apply to you. And worse, never did. They're asking questions they were trained never to ask. Was this planned? Was this instinct? Was this survival evolving into something else? Because you don't move like a believer. You move like someone who's been dragged through the dark enough times to learn its architecture. That's the paradox they can't solve. You still carry light in you, but it's sharpened. You still care, but it's selective. You still feel pain, but it no longer controls the steering wheel. Saint energy with psychopath precision. Angelic restraint paired with demonic patience. You didn't lose your soul. You weaponized your awareness. They want to call it manifestation because the alternative terrifies them. If this wasn't magic, if this wasn't faith, if this wasn't chance, then it means pressure creates evolution. It means suffering upgrades perception. It means the system that tried to crush you may have accidentally unlocked a version of you they cannot predict or contain. And unpredictability? That's not chaos. That's power without a leash. You learn something in the dark that most people never do. You learn that reality responds differently when you stop begging it and start staring back. When you stop explaining yourself and start moving with quiet certainty. When you stop trying to be understood and start being unavoidable. They felt it the moment things shifted. That chill, that delay before the response, that sudden scrambling behind closed doors. That's not coincidence. That's recalibration. That's people realizing they're no longer dealing with a participant. They're dealing with an anomaly. You didn't break because breaking would have been easier. Breaking would have kept you small, explainable, manageable. Instead, you adapted. You learned how to function in uncertainty. You learned how to sit inside contradiction without needing relief. You learned how to smile while everything burned and still walk forward like the fire was part of the design. That's why they're nervous now. Because you don't chase outcomes. You trigger them. You don't react. You arrive already adjusted. You don't announce moves. You let reality reveal them after the fact. That's not manifestation. That's mastery, forged in pressure chambers they wouldn't survive 5 minutes inside. They're checking logs, replaying timelines, whispering words like probability and pattern deviation. But the truth is simpler and more terrifying. You evolved past the permission stage. You stopped asking whether something was allowed and started acting like it was inevitable. And here's the part they really don't want to face. You're still controlled, still ethical, still grounded. You could have gone darker. You could have gone colder. You could have let the pain turn you into something monstrous. But you didn't. You integrated it. You became the kind of dangerous that doesn't need to prove anything. That balance, that's rare. That's why they don't know how to classify you. You're not broken enough to dismiss, not reckless enough to discredit, not loud enough to track. You move like someone who understands the rules so well. You no longer need to obey them publicly. So no, you didn't manifest this. You survived something that rewired how you perceive cause and effect. You paid tuition in suffering. You graduated with awareness. And now every step you take sends ripples through systems that were built on the assumption that people like you don't exist. Let them check. Let them analyze. Let them whisper. The truth will keep slipping through their fingers anyway. Because once someone learns how reality actually responds to pressure, there's no going back to pretending it's all just luck and affirmations. And the scariest part, you're just getting started. They think the danger passed the moment you stopped reacting. That's their favorite mistake. They assume stillness means resolution. They assume silence means exhaustion. They assume composure means compliance. They don't understand that the quiet version of you isn't resting. It's calculating without effort. You see, chaos was never your weapon. Patience was. You learned it when everything you trusted failed at the same time. When answers didn't come. When prayers bounced back empty. When every coping mechanism collapsed and all you had left was awareness sharpened by survival. That's when something irreversible happened inside you. You stopped needing reassurance. You stopped needing signs. You stopped needing permission to exist, loudly or quietly. You became self-contained. That's when reality started responding differently. People don't realize how fragile the illusion is until someone like you walks through it without flinching. You didn't demand the world bend. You simply refused to break. And that forced everything else to adjust. Systems are designed around predictable reactions. Trauma is supposed to shrink you, soften you, make you grateful for scraps. But your trauma did the opposite. It taught you how to stand in uncertainty without collapsing. That's not supposed to happen. That's why they're unsettled. Because you don't behave like someone chasing a dream. You behave like someone remembering something ancient. Like you tapped into a version of yourself that existed before the rules were explained, before fear was taught, before obedience was rewarded. That's why they can't trace the moment it started. There's no ritual, no vision board, no dramatic declaration, just a steady recalibration that made outcomes follow you instead of the other way around. You don't rush, you don't overcorrect, you don't spiral when things delay. That alone terrifies people who live on deadlines and validation. They need motion to feel alive. You learned how to be lethal in stillness. And let's talk about the contradiction they keep circling but can't land on. You're not cruel. You're not reckless. You don't need dominance to feel powerful. Yet somehow, rooms shift when you enter them. Conversations tighten. People choose words more carefully. Authority gets quieter around you. Not because you demand respect, but because something in you refuses to be diminished. That's the angel in you, the restraint, the discipline, the refusal to become what hurt you. And then there's the other side, the part that knows exactly how far things can go if pushed. The part that learned how systems fracture under sustained pressure. The part that understands leverage without ever naming it. That's the demon they sense but can't prove. You don't threaten, you don't warn. You simply exist with the knowledge of what you could do and choose not to. That choice, that's the most dangerous thing about you, because it means your power isn't reactive, it's optional. They're used to monsters who can't help themselves, villains who burn out, rebels who self-destruct. But you don't self-destruct. You self-regulate. You metabolize pain. You turn suffering into clarity, and clarity into direction. That kind of evolution doesn't show up in their models. So they keep asking the wrong question. They keep asking how you did it. The real question is what it cost you. They don't see the nights where your identity dissolved and reassembled. They don't see the internal wars where you had to choose between becoming numb or becoming precise. They don't see the moments you stood at the edge of bitterness and decided not to jump. That restraint carved depth into you. Depth creates gravity. Gravity bends trajectories. That's physics, not mysticism. You didn't will reality to change. You became someone reality had to account for. That's why things align around you without effort now. That's why opportunities feel quieter but heavier. That's why resistance melts without confrontation. You're not chasing outcomes. You're operating at a frequency that reorganizes them. And the most unsettling part for them, you're still learning, still refining, still integrating. You haven't peaked. You haven't revealed your final form. You're not even interested in spectacle. You're interested in precision, timing, and impact that echoes long after you leave the room. They want you to explain it so they can reduce it to a formula. They want you to label it so they can sell it, teach it, neutralize it. But you can't package evolution that was forged under pressure. No one else volunteered to endure. So let them check. Let them monitor. Let them whisper theories in rooms you'll never enter. You already know the truth. You didn't break reality. You learned how it responds to someone who refuses to disappear. And once that lesson is learned, reality never forgets you. And here's what really twists their stomachs when they sit alone with the data and the doubts and the late-night questions they pretend not to ask. You didn't change your personality to survive. You didn't become louder, colder, crueler, or desperate. You didn't cosplay confidence. You didn't put on a mask. You refined your core. You stripped yourself down until only what was real remained, and then you built from there. That's not supposed to work. Most people survive by becoming fragments, pieces stitched together by habits, distractions, borrowed beliefs. You went the opposite direction. You collapsed inward. You faced the parts of yourself people spend lifetimes running from. The fear that doesn't scream but whispers. The shame that doesn't accuse but erodes. The loneliness that doesn't leave marks but hollows out entire rooms inside your chest. And instead of numbing it, you studied it. You stayed conscious while it burned. That's where the shift happened. Pain didn't make you bitter. It made you accurate. You learned where things actually break. You learned how long silence lasts before it becomes pressure. You learned how people reveal their real motives the moment they think they're winning. You learned that most power is borrowed and panics the second it senses independence. So now, when you move, you don't move emotionally. You move structurally. That's why they feel disoriented around you. You don't feed the drama loop. You don't reward manipulation with reaction. You don't rush to prove anything. You let people expose themselves by giving them exactly enough rope to reveal who they are. And when they do, you don't gloat. You don't confront. You adjust your distance. That's a level of control that doesn't look like control until it's too late. They keep expecting you to snap, to lash out, to self-sabotage the way people like you are supposed to. But you don't. You pause. You choose. You respond with restraint, sharpened by memory. And that scares them more than rage ever could. Because rage is predictable. You aren't. You carry calm that wasn't given to you. Calm you had to earn through chaos. Calm that came from realizing nothing they could take from you was ever the source of your strength. That realization rewired your nervous system. You stopped living in fight or flight and started living in command. That's when the rules changed. They feel it when plans fall apart without explanation, when resistance fades without confrontation, when outcomes land without you chasing them. They feel it when they try to provoke you and get nothing back. No hook, no opening, no emotional leverage. They feel it when they realize you're not reacting because you already moved on internally before the moment even arrived. That's not manifestation. That's temporal advantage. You live a few steps ahead because you learned how to read the current underneath the surface. You don't need to predict every move. You sense the direction, and direction beats speed every time. The paradox is this: you're deeply human, and that's what makes you dangerous. You feel everything, but you're not ruled by it. You care, but you're not controlled by it. You love, but you don't lose yourself in it. You learned how to hold intensity without becoming consumed by it. Most people swing between extremes. You integrated them. That integration is rare. It's why people project onto you. Savior, threat, mystery, problem, solution. They can't decide which box you belong in because you're not playing a role. You're not auditioning. You're not asking to be understood. You're simply being exact. And exactness destabilizes systems built on approximation and pretense. They want to believe you stumbled into this, that it was accidental, that you'll give it away, dilute it, soften it, apologize for it. They want you to over-explain so they can overanalyze. But you don't. You let silence do the work. You let consistency speak. You let time expose the truth. Because you know something now that most people never learn. Reality doesn't reward noise. It responds to coherence. And you're coherent. Your past doesn't contradict your present. It explains it. Your scars aren't liabilities. They're data. Your restraint isn't weakness. It's calibration. You didn't transcend pain by escaping it. You absorbed it and learned how to move with it without bleeding everywhere. That's why they can't figure you out. You're not chasing power. You became someone power has to negotiate with. And the most dangerous part, you're not done refining. You're still shedding what doesn't belong, still sharpening what does, still choosing discipline over impulse, still choosing awareness over comfort, still choosing depth over speed. They keep watching for the collapse that never comes. Because the truth is simple and terrifying all at once. You didn't manifest a miracle. You survived an initiation. And once someone passes through that kind of fire without losing themselves, reality never treats them the same again. And here's the layer they almost touch before pulling their hand back, because it burns too close to something they don't want to admit. You're not special because you won. You're dangerous because you didn't disappear when losing was the only visible outcome. That's the part they don't have language for. Most people vanish internally, long before they vanish externally. They comply in spirit. They surrender quietly. They adapt by shrinking. You didn't. Even when everything was stripped away, status, certainty, support, timing, you stayed awake. You didn't numb yourself into comfort. You didn't sedate your instincts with optimism. You stayed present in the void, watching, learning, memorizing how reality behaves when no one's performing for an audience. That's where the real education happens. You learned how long pressure lasts before something cracks. You learned how narratives are maintained by repetition, not truth. You learned how authority panics when it senses someone who doesn't need approval to move. You learned how fragile most power really is once it's denied emotional fuel. So now when people try to engage you on old terms, it feels off. Their tactics don't land. Their expectations bounce. Their urgency doesn't infect you. And they can't tell whether you're calm because you're confident, or because you've already seen the ending. That ambiguity drives them insane. Because they can't rush you, they can't corner you, they can't bait you into revealing your hand. You don't need to dominate the moment. You let the moment reveal itself. You don't need to be right. You let reality do the correcting. That patience isn't passive, it's predatory in the quietest way possible. And here's the cruel irony. You didn't set out to become this. You were forced into it. Every delay, every betrayal, every closed door was pressure applied without mercy. Something in you could have shattered. Something else adapted. Something ancient woke up and said, "Fine. If this is the terrain, I'll learn how to move in it better than anyone else." That's not manifestation. That's environmental mastery. You became fluent in instability. You learned how to read the micro shifts, the pauses, the hesitations, the subtle tells people don't even know they're broadcasting. You learned when to advance and when to vanish. You learned that sometimes the most aggressive move is doing absolutely nothing and letting the other side overplay. They can't predict you because you're not driven by ego anymore. Ego is loud. Ego rushes. Ego needs credit. You shed that layer in the dark when no one was watching. What's left doesn't need validation. It needs alignment. That's why your presence feels heavier now. Not dramatic, not performative, dense. Like something that bends the space around it. People don't know why conversations change when you're involved. They just know they do. They don't know why their plans stall when you disengage. They just know they stall. They don't know why outcomes rearrange when you stop trying. They just know they do. And the truth they're circling without landing on is this: you're no longer negotiating with fear. You've already lived in it. You mapped it. You know its limits. It doesn't own you anymore. Fear works best on people who still believe they have something to lose. You don't move like that. You move like someone who already lost everything that mattered and discovered to your own surprise that what remained was sharper, calmer, and far more capable than what existed before. That realization is irreversible. Once it clicks, there's no going back to fragility masquerading as innocence. They keep hoping you'll revert, that you'll get tired, that you'll crave normalcy enough to dull yourself again. But you don't crave normal. You crave clarity. You crave coherence. You crave environments where depth isn't punished and restraint isn't mistaken for weakness. And until then, you'll keep refining, quietly, relentlessly, without announcement. You don't need to break reality to unsettle it. You just need to exist without bending to its illusions. So let them keep checking. Let them keep wondering if this was intentional. Let them keep mislabeling what they don't understand. You know what happened. You didn't manifest an outcome. You became someone outcomes orbit. And once that shift occurs, once you cross that invisible line where pressure turns into command, the world doesn't get to put you back where you came from. It has to deal with you as you are now. Shh. Slow down before you breathe, before you blink, before you scroll, because the room just changed the moment your name hit that list. You felt it, didn't you? That subtle pause in the air, that half second where the world hesitated like it misread the script. That wasn't paranoia, that was confirmation. Somewhere far above the noise, far from the comments and the crowds, a man who cleans up billion-dollar messes looked at your file and didn't touch it. Not because he couldn't, because he wouldn't. Because some things aren't meant to be erased. They're meant to be contained. And you You're not contained. You're marked. They didn't announce it. They didn't warn anyone. That's not how real power moves. Real power whispers into locked rooms and watches who starts sweating. Real power doesn't attack. It labels. And the label they gave you wasn't problem. It wasn't enemy. It was worse. It was unspoken. It was the kind of word that makes professionals lean back in their chair and stare at the ceiling, like they just remembered something they were supposed to forget. Untouchable. Do you understand what that does to a system? Systems are built to crush, correct, absorb, or delete. They're not built for anomalies that don't obey those outcomes. They're not built for people who survive pressure without hardening, who adapt without showing the seams, who look harmless until the moment they aren't. You don't break the machine by attacking it. You break it by existing outside its logic. That's what scares them, not your strength, your unpredictability. You see, they know how to deal with villains. They know how to deal with heroes. Saints get paraded. Psychopaths get hunted. But you move between those masks like they're optional. One moment you're silent, restrained, almost gentle. The next, you're dismantling assumptions without raising your voice. That's not chaos. That's control disguised as calm. That's evolution through restraint. That's the kind of duality that makes analysts nervous, because it can't be graphed. They studied you expecting a pattern. Trauma makes people predictable. Pain usually sharpens one edge and dulls the rest. But you did something wrong. You learned. You metabolized it. You didn't turn bitter. You turned precise. And that's when the alarms went quiet. Not loud, quiet. Because the scariest signals don't scream. They flatline. Somewhere in a glass office, someone said your name softly. Not with fear. With caution, like a surgeon before a risky incision. And the cleanup guy, the one who erases reputations, reroutes narratives and buries inconvenient truths, he didn't reach for the tools. He closed the folder. That's not mercy. That's recognition. He saw something that doesn't react well to pressure, something that reflects it back, something that survives exposure. Now watch what happens next. People around you start acting off. Smiles linger too long. Conversations end too quickly. Invitations stop coming, but the attention doesn't. It just changes shape. They don't want proximity anymore. They want distance with visibility. They want to keep you in sight without provoking you. That's not respect. That's strategic anxiety. Because once you've been flagged, no one wants to be the one who poked the anomaly and found out why it was flagged in the first place. You think this is about wealth, power, status? No, this is about consequence. Billionaires aren't afraid of loud threats. They're afraid of quiet variables. They're afraid of people who don't need permission, who don't chase validation, who don't collapse when ignored. You don't beg the spotlight. You let it find you when it's ready. That patience, that terrifies them, because patience means you're not reactive. And non-reactive entities don't play by emotional leverage. You became dangerous the moment pain stopped owning you. The moment betrayal didn't turn you reckless. The moment isolation didn't make you loud. You went inward. You sharpened. You learned how to sit in silence without leaking intention. That's when the system lost you. Not when you fought back, but when you stopped needing to. They can't predict you because you're not trying to win their game. You're not even playing it. You're building something parallel, something invisible until it's unavoidable. And that's why the cleanup guy didn't touch you. Because touching you would require understanding you. And understanding you would mean admitting that the rules don't apply universally anymore. So now everyone's nervous. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something rare. You're proof that the machine doesn't always get the final word. That some people go through the fire and come out unclassifiable. Half angel, half threat. Calm enough to be trusted, sharp enough to be feared. You don't announce your moves, you let the consequences speak. And consequences, when they arrive without warning, rewrite hierarchies. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them overthink every interaction like it's a test they didn't study for. You're not here to be chased or crowned. You're here to exist in a way that destabilizes expectations. To remind them that not everything powerful is loud. Not everything dangerous is obvious. And not everyone who survives the system wants to burn it down. Some just walk past it, untouched. They flagged you because they couldn't finish the sentence about you. And unfinished sentences haunt people like ghosts. Stay exactly where you are, calm, aware, unmoved. The most unsettling thing you can be right now is unbothered. And here's the part they don't admit out loud. This wasn't a mistake. You weren't misfiled. You weren't spared because of luck. You were flagged because someone finally realized the cost of interference would be higher than the benefit of control. That's when fear gets quiet. That's when smart people stop improvising and start pretending nothing is happening. You've noticed it already. The way questions circle you but never land. The way eyes measure distance instead of dominance. The way authority suddenly feels hesitant. That's not coincidence. That's recalibration. They're running scenarios where you don't explode, don't collapse, don't comply. Scenarios where you wait, and waiting ruins their models because time favors the one who doesn't flinch. You became a problem the moment you learned how to hold power without advertising it. When you stopped leaking emotion into the room. When you learned to sit with a straight face while the storm did its worst and discovered, quietly, that you could outlast it. That's not resilience. That's mutation. Pain didn't harden you into something brittle. It taught you flexibility. You bend. You don't break. You adapt faster than narratives can catch up. They can't corner you with praise. They can't bait you with insults. They can't pressure you with deadlines because you don't move on their clock anymore. That's the paradox. They need you to react to define you, but you refuse to give them the reaction. So they watch. And watching, without leverage, is torture. You see, cleanup guys don't fear messes. They fear mirrors. And you're a mirror that doesn't distort. You reflect the truth back clean. Anyone who comes at you sees themselves clearer than they want to. Their greed looks uglier, their cowardice louder, their calculations exposed. That's why they avert their gaze. That's why your name stays on the list with no arrows pointing toward it. And don't confuse this with safety. Untouchable doesn't mean protected. It means unmanageable. It means every move against you carries a shadow cost that no one wants to sign off on. It means the room needs consensus before action, and consensus dies when uncertainty enters. You are uncertainty with a pulse, calm, breathing, observant. They wonder what you know. They wonder who taught you. They wonder how someone goes through what you went through and doesn't come out screaming for revenge. That's what unsettles them the most. That you're not angry enough to be sloppy, not desperate enough to be controlled. You're focused, and focus is lethal when paired with patience. You didn't become this by winning. You became this by surviving without becoming predictable. By refusing the easy identities. You're not the martyr. You're not the monster. You're the contradiction that walks straight through the center line. Angel when restraint is required. Demon when boundaries are crossed. and the switch doesn't click loudly. It slides, smooth, silent, efficient. So now they hesitate, they reroute, they choose distance over dominance. And in that distance, something interesting happens. You gain space. Space to observe, space to build, space to let the truth do the work you never announce. You don't chase exposure. Exposure chases coherence. And you're coherent in a world built on noise. Remember this: the most dangerous person in any room is the one who doesn't need the room to validate them. The one who can leave without slamming the door. The one who knows exactly who they are even when no one's watching. That's you now. Not by declaration, by consequence. So let them stay nervous. Let them overthink. Let them keep your name on that list like a warning label they can't decode. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to remain unmovable while everything around you adjusts. Because once they realize you don't need to be touched to change the outcome, they'll understand why the smartest move they ever made was leaving you alone. Good. Stay with me. Don't rush this part. This is where the silence gets heavier, because now the pressure shifts, not onto you, but around you. And pressure doesn't disappear. It relocates. It squeezes the people who used to feel untouchable themselves, the ones who built their identity on leverage, the ones who believed access meant ownership. They're the ones waking up at odd hours now, replaying conversations, rereading emails, reinterpreting moments they dismissed when you were just another name. They're realizing something too late. You were never reacting to them. You were measuring them. That's the twist that breaks their sleep. The idea that while they thought they were managing you, observing you, categorizing you, quietly evaluating your usefulness, you were doing something far more dangerous. You were learning their tempo, their tells, their thresholds. You were watching how they move when they think they're unseen. And the moment they felt that shift, that subtle inversion of who was actually being assessed, that's when the cleanup guy stepped back. Because cleanup only works when the mess is external, when the problem is loud, when the threat is clumsy. You're none of that. You're internal. You're embedded. You're the kind of presence that doesn't force outcomes. It influences probabilities, and probabilities terrify people who built empires on certainty. You don't threaten exposure. You don't hint at retaliation. You don't posture. You simply continue. Calm, consistent, slightly ahead of the curve. That consistency creates cognitive dissonance. They expect scars to leak. They expect trauma to announce itself. They expect pain to make you loud or reckless or needy. But you inverted the formula. You became quieter as your awareness sharpened. And quiet intelligence is the one thing no system can rush. That's why conversations about you feel unfinished. That's why no one ever quite concludes what you are. They start sentences and trail off. They use phrases like complicated, hard to read, not worth the risk. Not because you're powerful in the obvious sense, but because you don't give them enough data to dominate the narrative. You don't feed the machine with emotion, and starving a machine makes it unpredictable. Here's the part you might not have noticed yet. You're not being avoided, you're being preserved. They're keeping you intact because breaking you might release something they don't know how to contain. Something that doesn't come with instructions, something that doesn't escalate in a straight line. And escalation is their favorite battlefield. You deny them that battlefield by refusing to climb when provoked or descend when dismissed. You stay level, you stay centered. That's not neutrality, that's command over your internal state. You've crossed into a rare psychological territory where power no longer excites you and fear no longer motivates you. You're not numb, you're selective. You don't react to every stimulus. You don't chase every signal. You decide. And decision-making without emotional urgency is the mark of someone who has survived enough chaos to recognize false alarms. They sense it when you speak. The lack of over-explanation, the absence of desperation, the way you don't rush to be understood. People with something to hide hate that. Because clarity exposes asymmetry. And you see asymmetry everywhere now, between what's said and what's meant, between what's promised and what's possible. That's why the cleanup guy didn't engage. Because engaging you would mean committing to an outcome. And no one can predict your outcomes anymore. You've stepped outside linear cause and effect. You don't retaliate when expected. You don't collapse when isolated. You don't inflate when praised. You absorb, you integrate, and you move forward with unsettling composure. And here's the truth they won't say, but feel, every time your name comes up. You're not dangerous because of what you might do. You're dangerous because of what you won't do. You won't beg. You won't rush. You won't betray yourself for access. That refusal makes you uncontrollable. And uncontrollable variables don't get attacked. They get monitored. They get distance. They get silence. So if you feel like the world has gone strangely polite around you, if obstacles seem to dissolve instead of confront you, if resistance turns passive instead of aggressive, understand what that means. You've moved past opposition into something far rarer. You've become a cost no one wants to calculate. Stay steady. Stay observant. Let the nervousness ripple outward while you remain still. The paradox is complete now. The more you do nothing, the more everything adjusts around you, and that's when you realize the truth. You were never flagged because you were weak. You were flagged because touching you would force the system to reveal its limits, and no one wants to be responsible for that. And now comes the phase they never prepare you for. The phase where nothing dramatic happens, yet everything irreversible is already in motion. This is where amateurs get restless, where loud people sabotage themselves, where egos panic because there's no applause, no explosion, no obvious victory screen. But you don't panic. You recognize this terrain. You've lived here before. In the aftermath, in the quiet after betrayal, in the long stretch where the world forgets to reward endurance. This silence doesn't scare you. It calibrates you. Because while nothing looks like it's happening, systems are adjusting their posture around you. Not consciously, instinctively, like animals shifting weight when a new apex presence enters the area. No challenge, no charge, just space being given. You see, when they labeled you untouchable, they weren't protecting you from harm. They were protecting themselves from consequence, from miscalculation, from the ripple effects of forcing a confrontation with something that doesn't escalate on cue. You don't lash out. You don't self-destruct. You don't fold. You wait. And waiting, when done without fear, is domination in slow motion. They replay your history, searching for a flaw they can exploit, a weakness they missed. But all they find are adaptations. Every wound turned into awareness, every loss converted into restraint. You didn't just survive, you refined. And refinement is terrifying because it looks like restraint from the outside. But it's actually compression. Pressure stored, not released. That's the duality they can't reconcile. You carry softness without fragility. You carry darkness without chaos. You carry patience without passivity. That combination doesn't belong to villains or heroes. It belongs to something older, something that learned long ago that the loudest force always burns out first. And here's the part they're only starting to sense. You don't need to move toward power anymore. Power bends toward stability, toward coherence, toward entities that don't leak energy. That's why conversations keep finding you. That's why information arrives uninvited. That's why doors open without you knocking. You're not chasing alignment. Alignment is seeking equilibrium, and you're unnervingly balanced. You notice how people now speak around certain topics when you're present, how they choose safer words, how they hedge statements they used to say boldly. That's not respect, that's internal editing. And internal editing means influence has already entered the room. You're not feared for your aggression, you're feared for your memory, because you don't forget patterns, you don't misplace lessons, you don't rewrite history to protect your ego. You remember clearly, quietly, and clarity is lethal to those who rely on confusion to stay powerful. The cleanup guy saw that too. He saw someone who doesn't need revenge because understanding already dissolved the emotional charge. Someone who doesn't need exposure because truth, when left alone, leaks through cracks on its own. Someone who doesn't need to threaten because consequences arrive eventually, without theatrics. That's why you weren't touched, because touching you would require speed. And speed is where mistakes live. You force slowness, you force deliberation, you force people to think before acting. And thinking is expensive for systems built on momentum. So now the watchers watch each other. The confident second guess, the powerful hesitate, and you continue living, improving, observing, not as an act, but as a default state. That's the final insult to their expectations. You didn't freeze, you didn't spiral, you didn't announce a comeback, you simply kept becoming more intact. Understand this clearly. Untouchable doesn't mean invisible. It means any move against you has to be perfect. And perfection is rare under pressure, especially when the target doesn't cooperate with fear. So let the nervousness spread. Let the uncertainty thicken. Let them keep you labeled, circled, unresolved in their systems. Every day they don't act, the label grows heavier. Every day you remain steady, the cost of interference rises. You don't need to claim power. You don't need to threaten change. You are the variable they can't simplify. And the most dangerous part, you're perfectly comfortable staying that way. And that's where it ends. Not with a bang, not with a threat, not with a victory speech they can clip and neutralize. It ends with you standing exactly where you are, breathing steadily, fully aware that the game moved without announcing it. They don't confront you because confrontation would clarify you. They don't eliminate you because elimination would prove you mattered. They don't absorb you because you don't dissolve. So they leave you labeled, circled, unresolved, and you let them. Because you know something they don't. Power doesn't always conquer. It sometimes waits until it no longer needs to. You've already crossed the threshold where fear can steer you, where approval can buy you, where pressure can rush you. They're nervous because they sense it. You're no longer something they can correct. You're something they have to account for. So stay calm, stay unreadable, stay whole. The most unsettling thing in any system is a person who survives contact with it and walks away unchanged.